Welcome YouTubers and fellow tankers, I am Shrine King. You've arrived at King's Court Reviews. And we are reviewing World of Tanks. More specifically today we're going to talk about the Lorraine 40T, which is a French premium medium. Tier 8. And here is the Lorraine. So those who are new, I cover kind of pros, cons, guides of how to play the tank, what's the benefit of the tank, is it worth it kind of stuff. And then I will also kind of cover like what are scenarios that you got to be careful of and what kind of tanks you got to be wary of, so on and so forth. So here it is. This is the Lorraine 40T. It is premium, and that again means that if you have a crew in there, you can actually put any crew of a French medium crew in this tank, and it will count as if they were actually qualified to run that tank. That's one of the benefits of premium. So here you'll see I'm giving just the overall stats, right? And you'll see that it has 1,300 hit points, 380 view range. It has 21.9% concealment. Now bear in mind that is after I put everything on here. So my crew does not have fully stacked concealment, so that's one thing to note for these numbers that you're seeing. Also, I did not put a camo net on it. The model here that you're seeing is I'm going to run this as kind of like a more, I guess, mobile aggressor tank rather than a sniper. Now, let's just jump right into it, right? What are the pros of the tank? So, one, it is fast. It is able to get up to good speed and get to places relatively quick. So you'll see that the specific power on the side there, like I'm going through other things right now, but the specific power on the side is saying that, hey, you're looking at 21.07. That is actually pretty decent. That means that you can get up to speed relatively quickly. And then your top speed looks like it's 60. It's yeah, and I apologize. It's actually hard for me to read this right now. And then your view range is, okay, so that's one of the pros. The gun is actually a big pro on it. It is pretty accurate, so that's where you see that it's like 0.35 or 0.36 with a 2.3 like aim time. Now, the part there is you'll notice that it has a load time of 34 seconds, and that's actually because it has 4 rounds. It's an auto loader. So it has 4 rounds that are doing 320 out, or I'm sorry, actually 300 average damage that has 232 penetration. So that means the penetration normally is actually pretty good at the tier and a tier above, and where like the tier 10s, it's okay, it's workable, but it's not amazing, right? Now that said, the premium rounds are actually higher penetration, and those put it to a standard round of tier 10, meaning that you can still fight tier 10s in this tank. That said, though, it's not that you're going to be running around trying to fight tier 10s like in the face or anything. So now, like I said, I put this as an aggressor, so that's kind of what you're seeing right now in the background here. But other pros to it is that it actually has decent angling in the front, and it has unique armor that allows for deflections off the front, so that's good to know. That means, but bear in mind that means, hey, if it's the side of the tank and stuff like that, people are just going to knock you. Now, other than that, I wouldn't say that there's a lot of pros. The cons that come with the tank, right? Well, one, on the autoloader side, you're looking at reload time, right? So people who understand autoloaders tend to push the autoloaders when they're trying to reload, and they know the count of the shells. So that's one thing to bear in mind, because your premium, it is a hard set amount, and that is now people know that you have 4 rounds, whereas another tank could have like 3 or 4 or 5. It all depends on what gun they're running and what turret they have and stuff like that. So the other con I'm pointing out here now, especially with what was happening there, is you'll saw that hey, I got ammo wrecked, but then I also got stunned, and that altogether makes the reload like ridiculously long. Which means you will probably spend more of your repair kits and med packs just to make sure that you can maintain and continue to shoot people. View range is not that amazing, right? When I saw it's like 360, 370, 380, somewhere in there. That's actually not that great at the tier, right? There are tier 8s out there that actually have 410 view range. So What that means is your ability to spot people is not going to be all that great. Now that, of course, is in current setup that I have. There are other setups that you can run, such as running like coded optics or binocs, and it all depends, and I'll cover that here in a little bit. But the other con that comes with it is people that understand the tank, because as I mentioned, the hull armor is actually kind of interesting and unique, but with its capability to bounce shots or deflections. The turret, on the other hand, is actually something you just pen right through the cheeks most cases for most weapons. So that's a big con. So the armor is not that great in a sense of keeping you alive. Yeah, other than that, I think that's really the gist of the cons. So you'll notice, pro-wise, there's not major pros. Con-wise, not major cons. So it's kind of just, an average. Like it averages out. Kind of like, okay. I kind of have, just, whichever way I want to go. Now, with that said, though, the cool part is this tank does have, because it's that model, like it's an in-between of things. You actually have a lot of options for this tank. Now this is where I'm going to get more into the guide, right? Well, actually, before I get into the guide, let me cover, is it worth it? My answer is yes, right? For the French mediums, it is an interesting damage potential tank that brings it, you'll see here, it can't survive artillery very well because of the effect of the armor, so you want to be pretty already safe all the time. But right now, to my knowledge, the two mediums that really exist out there for premiums is Lorraine 40T, and then there's the, I'm trying to think of what it's called, is the Centurion 5-1 variant that is specifically for French. I want to say it's like the Primo Victoria. It's a special tank that was released, I think, for a band, actually, or to reflect the band. Now, honestly, if I were to compare, I would say that the Victoria is actually the better tank because you actually have armor, you're able to hold flanks. The other part there is that the gun on it fires so fast with good damage. It's like 240 with really high penetration, and it makes it to where it's very steady on the damage output. Now, where the Lorraine holds higher benefit is typically the clip aspect. So it's like, hey, I could just pump, like just dump into somebody. When you get to do that, that's great. This is definitely a tank that's able to pull that off a lot better than some. There are other mediums out there. I'm looking at you, T54E1, that is too slow, right? So it's a matter of trying to like sneak in there with not a very sneaky tank, and then just dump your clip into them. That said, it's still the same thing, right? So when you dump the clip, it hurts, and it can make a big difference. So I definitely still say it is worth it, and it's kind of dependent on your play style, right? If you like being kind of light, mobile, for example, if you want to be a sniper or backliner, I would say that this tank's definitely good for it. If you like the kind of upfront assault, I wouldn't really recommend this one. I would actually recommend the Victoria. Now, if you are relatively new, I will say the Victoria is probably better for performance overall as long as you just look into understanding depression along with armor angling. Once you have that down, you're good to go. Now, what I will point out is, as you're seeing these matches, these are just like the first couple matches that I even played in the tank, and all of which I actually was able to do pretty well. And that was with me having a model that's more aggressive. Now, let's talk about guide here. Like, how would you play this tank? What is recommended? Well, as I said, if you want to be a sniper, I don't recommend what I showed in there. Like, you want vents, but you're gonna want camo net and binocs, right? That's if you're trying to be a sniper / scout. If you have teammates, or let's say you platoon pretty often, and you know your buddies will help you, they'll spot for you, stuff like that, and you're just trying to dump out damage, you're gonna want camo, right? And that's for the ability to hide when necessary, right, and not get spotted, and most likely stay back, right? Then you're looking at vents, and anything to increase, you have two options. You either go for the aim speed increase, which I forget which one it is. I think it's yeah, I can't remember the name of it. And then the other one is where it says you gain a 20% bonus for or decreased loss of accuracy while on the move. Those are the things you want. Now here's a perfect case. I'm showing a dump, right? So I came up, okay, got this guy in the flank, and dump, and he's gone, right? That is the major strength to this tank, its capability, right? So and stuff like that is very impactful, right? So the defender can be very dangerous, especially if left on the field too long. In this case, I was able to just get in there, dump, kill him. We immediately just got rid of a threat. And then you just reposition, right? So as a sniper, right, you wouldn't really be doing that, but you still have that option, so bear that in mind. Now, if you are, and again, like I mentioned, like if you're trying to be supportive to your teammates, then we're talking about a little bit different build. Now, if you do want to be the aggressive, mobile, just keep maneuvering around, kind of like what I consider as guerrilla warfare, kind of hit-run tactics. That's where you see the build, like what I did is I have the what is it? I have, darn it, why do I keep forgetting this stuff? I have the vents, and then I had the aim time, and then I had the reduced aim loss on the move, right? And that's and the reason being is because like when you're trying to dump, you really need to dump, and you need to get those browns out as quickly as possible. So that's where it's like, all right, I'm gonna run right up there, and I gotta dump. Why it's not so important to have the aim time stuff and things like that when you're playing like sniper is because you're typically going to sit still. You're going to actually have most of your aim reticle already brought in, right? Which allows you to not have to lose a lot of your aim when looking around. And you can see there, like I pulled in a lot of damage, right? And it's definitely a very capable performance tank. Now, given I think this is during the holiday season or whatever, so like the rewards were pretty extensive, if I remember right. Where you'll see, oops, well, yeah, I guess I didn't really let it show too much there, but yeah, I mean, it's 76,000 is what I pulled in with premium, and that is actually what I got, right? Because it was 102,000 earned entirely for the battle. Not sure why I cycled so fast on that. I was kind of trying to see if there's extra. Yeah, see, like that's just straight up nothing for anything extra. So now to the same statement, right? What if you kind of wanted to do all of the above, but know that hey, you're not going to be the one spotting or super hiding as a sniper. So that's where we're saying you can move in, you can move out, you can get in like out of range, so that way you're now inside the draw distance range. So by the way, if you don't know, the three circles, the blue one is kind of saying where my vision is now, yellow is saying where maximum vision is, which is 445 meters, and then the red is saying that is maximum draw, which means from yellow to red, if anyone is in there, they can't see me, period, no matter what they do. But if someone else were to move in and spot me, they can communicate where I am, and that way then they can shoot me by looking at, like, because of the fact that someone's communicating where I am, right? So that's the difference between the yellow and red lines, and the part that you have to bear in mind, because it's not just about you and your position and their position, it's about even the team, right? Well, more or less their team. So here you'll see a case where I'm kind of going to play hybrid. I'm going to kind of try to do what I can overall. So there's aspects of sniping, there's aspects of, hey, move in and be aggressive, you try to assist, get spotting, stuff like that. So this is the model, like depending on what modules you pick or what style you're going for, all it is really saying start that way. If I were to give a guide on some of the, I guess, personality to run into this, it's to keep an open mind, keep a flexible one too. So you have a lot of potential of watching the map, seeing what's going on, right? And saying, hey, you know what? I see that there's a lot of problems over here. I can flex over here because you're fast, right? That's one of the things to note. As a fast tank, you're the essential role that is capable of maneuvering, right? So if entire flanks are losing and we just don't have a lot of tanks, no one's really going to be able to support or help or assist, you might be the one that needs to go, right? Now, given a lot of that comes into knowing the decisions being made by, you know, your level of skill, kind of seeing like how well the other members of your team are doing. Because I mean, honestly, why would you flex to go support a flank if the flank that you're on, no one seems to be really performing anyway? If anything, let them try and do this stuff, and you then do what you can to support the team, right? So if you know you're competent, and you won't have any problems damaging tanks and stuff like that, and it might be the choice right there, is do that, right? Don't always be the first one to be like, oh look, we're losing that fight, I have to go, right? Just bear in mind, it very well, like, honestly, for performance sake, if no one's going to help you, it's not worth it, right? Don't bother. So as the medium line, if you're not very familiar with the French medium line, there are two mediums. One's the Bat Chat, which is an auto-loaded medium, very interesting medium. It is very capable of scouting, very capable of being an aggressor, and very capable of damage output. It's a nutty tank altogether. A lot of people really enjoy it. And then they have a new line now. That's the AMX-30B, right? Now that one is a single fire medium. It's relatively mobile. I don't think it's as mobile as the Bat Chat, but its damage consistency output is really high. The Bat Chat's really good for just bursting someone down, right? It's the same model. Being a scout, right, is another thing that's really good because it actually has high enough camo, and it's kind of smaller in size, so it has all these benefits to, trying to hide. And its vision's actually really good, which is the other part that makes it really nice. So for that means that you technically have two crews that you could be trying to bring up in this tank. Now here's a case where, like I said, I'm sniping, right? That's pretty distant. We're looking at, almost 430 meters there, right? So and I'm not having, I didn't really have that much issue. I mean, given, hey, the one shot, he bounced it, but again, like my shot that you saw, that it was going right to the turret, so it's like 50-60% chance I was going to pen it, right? So that's pretty good, right? And that's stuff to remember too, is it's not just about your penetration rates. It's also about how big is your reticle and what are the chances of it going somewhere else, right? So if I'm like, hey, I see, oh man, it's most of my reticle is in an area I'm going to pen, well then, hey, my chance to do is pretty high. But if I say, well, it's about 50-50. Half of my reticle is really over the area I can pen, and the other half's on stuff I either can't or I flat out miss. Well then, you know what? You can't change the physics of that. No matter how good your pen is, it's still related to that. So like, for example, here you'll see I'm zooming all the way in, and like right here I'm saying, well, I have 0. I can't see anything on him. Even if he was there and was filling the reticle, you saw the hill, right? Now that hill would have made it to where I only had a 50-50 chance. So that's the parts to remember there. So now, here's a case where it's like, all right, I noticed my team was able to push up. Their team apparently moved out. Now I'm going to go on the move because I know I have the speed and stuff, so I'm going out here just to go assist, spot. So and I'm using the dips and things like that. You don't always have to be up there purely visible, right? There's times in between. So this is where I spotted, went down, waited a while till it cleared up, went back up, spotted again. And all in the meantime, I'm reloading, right? And here's where, he was looking, okay, cool, bam, they all knocked him. But here's again, one of the major weaknesses to this tank is artillery focusing firing you. So here's a case where both of them are trying to shoot me. Now, sadly, though, I don't have binocs, right? I don't have coated optics, and there is a light on that hill, which means I'm going to get spotted trying to get through here. Now, the real catch, though, is I do need to try to hopefully either get them to fire and see them, but this is the case where, hey, not only am I assisting my team, being a scout kind of, right? I'm also still able to fight, right? And be that kind of aggressor. So that's the stuff that you can do with this tank. So this is a model example of where you could have been a sniper, a scout, an aggressor, right? All that kind of stuff, because you have those options when you have mobility. Right? When you don't have mobility, it's kind of like, yeah, I'll be an aggressor maybe if I get there, right? And sometimes it's like, hey, everyone who's mobile, they got there, they took care of it, it's done. You never would have gotten there. Yay, right? So that's really the gist. Honestly, that's the gist of the tank overall. Like I said, that's kind of like play style stuff, right? So it's saying, hey, these are the options that you have as a guide of how to play the tank. Now, the parts I was talking about was like, what about matchups, right? What about bad matchups? Well, it again depends on what you kind of loaded your tank up for, but because you're kind of universal, there isn't that much bad matchup to the tank, except for, well, at least for matches as a whole, because of the fact that you can do pretty much all of it, right? You still have benefits. What I will say is maps that are very small, that tend to be super aggressive with full pushes, the factor there is it's really difficult because if they push all into you and they're kicking the crap out of people, like, yeah, you can dump and you'll get some good damage. So that's the part that's kind of nice is, yeah, okay. Even in the worst case scenario, you're probably still going to get like 900, 1200 damage as long as you're penning the targets, right? Making sure you are. But again, that's really just, that is what it is. Certain tanks are that way. So that's one I guess I would consider as a bad match. What are tanks you need to be careful of, right? One, anything that uses high explosive derp guns, right? So type 4 heavy, type 5 heavy, OHO I think is the tier 8, OI, all of those tanks are super duper dangerous to you. The reason being is with the high explosives and the penetration rate and the amount of damage, for example, if it's like 120, they don't even have to, it doesn't matter by angle, right? It's about where it hit, and then the burst counts, so it's basically saying what was the millimeter there. So if, which I think like you only have like 80 millimeters, so let's say their millimeter penetration on their high explosive was 80. Well, I'm sorry to say it, but you're going to get knocked for like 900 to 1,000 something damage. And you already see I only have 1,300 hit points, right? You can run a spall liner to try to reduce it, but hey, I mean, honestly, not only are you going to take that damage, but you're going to get probably critted. And honestly, if some of them have some of the skills like even I have, it's going to be like 2 crits, right? You're going to probably lose like multiple modules, or even like, your crew members, right? So that's the ones you really got to be careful about. The other part I would say is any tank that is got really good travel velocity shells. So for example, the Sturv tank destroyer typically fires APCR, which is already high velocity, right? And because it's APCR, it balances better, or I should say penetrates better on hard to shoot on angles, right? So where deflections are usually occurring within a 30-degree angle, so if you do a little 30-degree angle in your hand, if that is the angle of the armor that you're firing on, that's a deflection, right? Now with APCR, you can actually get it down to like 22, right? Now again, this all goes into the physics of the game, so it kind of has variable range, right? But I would say like 22% is what you're looking at. Now, rounds like Heat, for example, their thing is they work like high explosives. They're going to say, no, you know what? Typically, we don't deflect, right? We just, once we hit, if as long as it had enough to touch the activator, it'll explode. Or, in Heat's case, release the heat. Now, that said, you can still deflect, by the way, right? It's like 5 degrees. So if it is so sharp, like if you were to do a little bitty 5-degree angle in your hand, and you were shooting at something like that, now mind you, there's not a lot of cases where that's really the angle, but this, for example, the Sturv can pull that off, right? So you could have that angle. So in the event that you have something like that, like, yeah, man, even with Heat, you won't pen, it'll actually just deflect, right? So that's something to know. And honestly, Heat won't, the nice part about Heat is the travel velocity is normally not as good, right? So it'll be as like normal AP rounds, which means you can dodge and weave a little better, right? Makes it harder for people to hit you that way if you're on the move, right? So that's the stuff to remember. It's got to be while you're on the move. The APCR stuff, right? Well, the problem there is, well, you can even be on the move, man, and them dudes are going to nail you, right? And that's where it gets scary. So you'll see here, like one of the things, like if I was giving you a strategy, that's a big tank, high threat. Because of the same model. This is the tank you would be scared of because it fires high explosives, AP, or HESH, which is a mixture of heat and high explosives. So now it has higher penetration, a little bit lesser damage, but also runs off the model that when it hits, it explodes on the impact and then penetrates through. So that makes it to where they get all this really high damage. So that part, what you saw there is I actually shot the track out. And you'll see here, I'm actually aiming towards the track, and again, I didn't do so well there because the idea is do the damage and try to track. So here's where I'm playing a ridge, kind of poking up. This is a beneficial scenario for the tank, right? So that's just something to kind of bear in mind when you're doing the ridge stuff. It is kind of nice as long as they don't push you, right? That's the whole thing with the autoloaders. If they push you, it's kind of a bad deal. The other thing you want to be very careful about is while you do have some weight, you do not have a lot of weight. So other things you want to be careful of is charging heavies and charging mediums. Ones that really, really can pull off good rams. And what that is they have enough weight, enough engine power, enough mobility. Usually they even have a decent gun, so what's going to happen is they're going to shoot you, then ram you, and it's a lot of damage all in one. That's stuff like the T-54 Mod 1, right? Or the E-50 or E-50M. A lot of heavies, right? The charging kind is like the T-10, right? Even the 257, I think, is like one of the newer ones. It's same potential. It can do the same thing. So any of those heavies that are pretty mobile and have a lot of weight to them, that's the stuff you got to be careful about because they will jack you up if they can ram you. That said, you are mobile enough to try to dodge, but you want to be careful. That's all. That's really the gist of it, honestly. The only other thing I would say is obviously very particular lights that you have to be concerned about how close they have to get to see you. So what this goes into is more of the vision rate rather than the camo rate. So for example, the AMX 1357s, the French line ones, they actually have low vision rate typically. So what happens there is they can't counter your camo, but if you're not running camo, then they don't really have to. So you want to be careful with scouts as well, probably spotting. So, I mean, that's really it, ladies and gents. I hope this is helpful. Please let me know what your thoughts are. If there's other tanks that you want to see. And again, like I said, this tank is definitely worth it. There is another tank that would be potentially worth it, depending on your playstyle. And I hope, like, talking about the other playstyles and options to it has been useful. But let me know your thoughts. Please like, subscribe, help support the channel. Talk to you next time.